Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of the Terran Accord, her hands pressed against the cold metal table. The holographic display showed 12 dead worlds, each one a grave marker for millions of human lives. The blue dots that once marked thriving colonies now blinked red, indicating complete destruction. "Admiral, the Zephyrian envoy has arrived," Lieutenant Torres announced from his station. His voice carried the same hollow tone that had become common among the crew. 3 years of watching their people die had drained the hope from everyone's eyes. Chen nodded but did not look away from the display. New Geneva appeared before her in horrifying detail. The orbital cameras had captured the final moments before the Zephyrian energy weapons turned the planet's surface into glass. She could see the evacuation ships trying desperately to escape the atmosphere. Most never made it. The doors to the command center slid open with a soft hiss. High Talon Vexkar entered with the confident stride of a conqueror. His feathers were a brilliant gold and silver, marking him as one of the highest-ranking members of the Zephyrian coalition. Behind him walked 2 guards, their beaks held high with pride. Vexkar's translator device crackled to life as he spoke. "Admiral Chen, I bring you the generous terms of the Coalition Council. Your species has suffered enough. We offer you peace." Chen finally turned to face the alien diplomat. Her gray hair was pulled back tightly, and her blue eyes showed no emotion. She had learned to hide her feelings well over the past 3 years. "Peace," she repeated slowly. "What kind of peace?" The Zephyrian's head tilted in what humans had learned was their version of a smile. "Simple terms. Humanity will become a protected species under coalition law. Your remaining worlds will be safe from further action. In return, you will provide resources and labor as requested by the Council." "Labor," Chen said. "You mean slavery?" "Such a harsh word," Vexkar replied, his feathers ruffling slightly. "Think of it as guidance. Your species is young and aggressive. You attacked our ships when we tried to establish peaceful contact. We had to teach you proper behavior." The Admiral's jaw tightened. She remembered that first contact. The Zephyrian fleet had appeared at Earth's edge and immediately demanded that all human ships surrender their weapons. When the human defense fleet had refused, the aliens had opened fire without warning. That was 3 years ago. "You call the murder of 400 million people a lesson?" Chen asked. Vexkar spread his wings slightly. "Regrettable but necessary. Your species needed to understand the consequences of defying the coalition. We could have destroyed all human worlds, but we showed mercy. We stopped at 12 planets to give you time to accept reality." Lieutenant Torres made a sound like a growl from his station. Other crew members clenched their fists. Chen raised one hand slightly and they all remained quiet. She had trained them well. "And if we refuse your generous offer?" she asked. The alien's head bobbed up and down. "Then the lessons will continue until you learn. We have cataloged 37 human worlds that could be educated. We prefer not to waste more time on such actions." Chen walked slowly around the holographic display. Kepler Prime rotated before her, its cities now craters of melted stone. "You think we will be grateful?" she said. "Of course. We offer survival when we could offer extinction. Your ships are primitive. Your weapons cannot pierce our shields. Your people die so easily." Vexkar preened his feathers. "We have fought wars across the galaxy for 1,000 years. Humans are nothing special." The Admiral stopped walking and looked directly at the Zephyrian. "You're right about one thing. Humans are not special in the way you think." "Then you accept our terms?" Chen smiled for the first time in months. It was not a pleasant expression. "No, High Talon Vexkar. We have our own terms to offer you." The alien's feathers fluffed with surprise. "You cannot be serious. Your fleets are broken. Your colonies burn. What terms could you possibly offer?" "Simple ones," Chen replied. She pressed a control on the table and the display changed. Instead of dead worlds, it now showed star charts. Red lines connected dozens of systems in Zephyrian space. "We offer you one chance to surrender unconditionally. Return to your home systems and never leave them again." Vexkar's beak opened in what humans recognized as laughter. "Impossible. Your species has clearly lost its sanity along with its colonies. You have no ships left to threaten us, don't we?" Chen asked softly. The lights in the command center dimmed for a moment. Lieutenant Torres looked up from his console. "Admiral, incoming transmission from Ghost Fleet Alpha." "Put it through," Chen ordered. The holographic display shimmered and changed again. A new image appeared. a massive human warship unlike anything the Zephyrians had seen before. Its hull was black as space itself, and strange energy patterns flickered along its surface. "This is Captain Reynolds of the Shadow Strike," a voice announced. "All ships report ready for Operation Prometheus." "Awaiting your orders, Admiral." Vexcar stared at the image. This is impossible. Our intelligence networks tracked all human shipyards. You have no industrial capacity left." Chen's smile grew wider. "Your intelligence networks found what we wanted them to find." "Did you really think we would build our ships where you could see them?" The alien took a step backward. "Even if this ship exists, one vessel cannot challenge the Coalition fleet." "Who said it was just one ship?" Chen asked. She nodded to Torres, who pressed more controls. The display now showed dozens of the black warships, all broadcasting from different locations throughout Zephyrian space. "Impossible," Vexcar whispered. "You made one critical mistake," Chen said, walking closer to the alien. "You thought humanity would act like every other species you've conquered. You thought we would beg for mercy. You thought we would negotiate from fear." She stopped just in front of the Zephyrian. "You thought we would forgive." The Admiral turned back to the display. "For 3 years you taught us lessons about pain and loss. Thank you for the education. Now it's our turn to be the teachers." "What do you mean?" Vexcar demanded. Chen looked at him over her shoulder. "You mistake our silence for weakness. You will learn the difference." She pressed one final control on the table. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Operation Prometheus is now active. Show them what happens when you make humans angry." The display filled with new images. Throughout Zephyrian space, the black human ships were moving. They emerged from hiding places in asteroid fields and behind moons. They dropped out of hyperspace at the edges of Coalition systems. And at each location they broadcast the same message. Chen's voice echoed across the galaxy. "To all species watching this transmission, you are about to witness the price of underestimating humanity. We do not forgive. We do not forget. And we never stop learning." High Talon Vexcar stood frozen as he realized the truth. For 3 years, while his people celebrated their easy victories, humanity had been preparing. The dead colonies were not signs of human weakness. They were tuition payments for a very expensive education, and now school was in session. 3 months earlier, deep in the asteroid belt beyond Saturn, Dr. James Morrison floated through the hidden shipyard that officially did not exist. The massive construction facility had been carved out of a dead rock over 2 years ago. No government records mentioned its location. No budget documents showed its funding. As far as the galaxy was concerned, Forge Station Alpha was just another piece of space debris. Morrison pushed off a bulkhead and drifted toward the main construction bay. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see the latest Shadow-class destroyer taking shape. Robotic arms welded hull plates that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The ship looked like a piece of the void itself had been given form. "Doctor, the neural interface tests are ready for your review," called engineer Patricia Walsh. She was one of the few people who knew the true purpose of their work. Most of the construction crew believed they were building mining equipment or research vessels. The truth was far more dangerous. Morrison pulled himself to her workstation and looked at the data screens. "How many successful connections this time?" "All 47 test pilots achieved full synchronization with the ship systems," Walsh reported. The new neural links let human minds connect directly with the ship's AI. Response time is now faster than any biological reflexes. The doctor nodded grimly. "Good. Every advantage matters." "What about the adaptive armor?" Walsh called up new displays showing weapon test results. The smart metal exceeded all expectations. After taking hits from simulated Zephyrian energy weapons, the armor learned to deflect identical attacks. By the 10th shot, the test plates were actually reflecting the energy back at the source. Morrison watched the test footage with satisfaction. 3 years ago, when the first Zephyrian attacks began, humanity's technology had seemed primitive compared to alien weapons. Human missiles bounced off energy shields. Human lasers scattered against exotic armor. The aliens had good reason to think they were superior. But they had made one critical error. They assumed human technology could not improve. While the Zephyrians celebrated their easy victories, human engineers studied every piece of wreckage from destroyed ships. They analyzed energy patterns from enemy weapons. They recorded shield frequencies and weapon signatures. Each defeat taught them something new about their enemies. "Sir, I have the latest intelligence reports from Operation Trojan Horse," announced Captain Martinez from the communication center. She was reading from a heavily encrypted datapad. Our spy drones have successfully infiltrated 17 Zephyrian military facilities. They've copied fleet deployment patterns, communication codes, and tactical databases. Morrison smiled coldly. Excellent. What about the sleeper agents? All 47 infiltrator units report successful integration into Zephyrian society. They've established positions in communications, logistics, and military intelligence. When Operation Prometheus begins, they'll be ready to assist. The Zephyrians believed they were fighting primitive humans who barely understood space travel. They never suspected that human intelligence agents had been living among them for over a year. The aliens' own arrogance had made infiltration easy. They couldn't imagine that inferior humans might be capable of sophisticated deception. Morrison pushed himself toward the main observation deck. Through the massive windows, he could see 12 other construction facilities scattered throughout the asteroid belt. Each one was building a different type of ship. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and the massive dreadnoughts that would spearhead the coming offensive. Dr. Morrison, could you review the psychological warfare protocols? Asked Dr. Sarah Kim from the strategy department. She was floating near a holographic display showing Zephyrian fleet positions. We want to make sure our message is perfectly clear. Morrison studied the tactical plans. Unlike the Zephyrians, humans had no interest in clean, honorable battles. They intended to win through superior intelligence, better planning, and absolute psychological dominance. The key is to demonstrate that every Zephyrian assumption about humanity was wrong, Morrison explained to the gathered officers. They think we're weak because our technology seemed primitive. They think we're stupid because we appeared to surrender easily. They think we're broken because we stopped fighting back. He pointed to different sections of the battle plan. We'll show them that our technology was deliberately designed to seem inferior while we gathered intelligence. We'll prove that our surrender was actually a strategic delay while we built a real fleet, and we'll demonstrate that our silence was the calm before the storm. Commander Hayes, the military liaison to the project, floated closer to the display. What about collateral damage? The Zephyrian worlds contain billions of civilian aliens. Morrison's expression hardened. They showed no mercy to our children on New Geneva. They broadcast the deaths of our families as entertainment. However, we're not like them. We won't target civilians. He paused. But we will make sure every Zephyrian understands exactly what their leaders have done. The doctor called up new images showing specially designed transmission equipment. Every ship in the Shadow Fleet carries quantum broadcasting systems. When we strike Zephyrian military targets, we'll simultaneously transmit the full record of their war crimes to every screen on their worlds. Their own people will see the truth about what their military has been doing. Captain Reynolds appeared on the communication screen from his ship in another part of the asteroid field. Doctor, all Shadow Fleet vessels report ready for deployment. The crews are eager to begin. Morrison nodded. Maintain position until Admiral Chen gives the final authorization. Remember, timing is everything. We have one chance to shock the Zephyrians so completely that they'll never again underestimate any human. Dr. Kim pulled up the latest intelligence reports. Our spy satellites show that Zephyrian High Command is planning a victory celebration next week. They believe they've completely defeated humanity. It's the perfect time to strike. Let them celebrate, Morrison said quietly. Let them feel completely safe. It will make our lesson more effective. Engineer Walsh looked up from her technical reviews. Doctor, I have to ask, do you think this will really end the war? The Zephyrians have been conquering species for 1,000 years. They won't surrender easily. Morrison stared out at the hidden fleet taking shape in the darkness. Hundreds of ships that represented humanity's greatest technological achievement, each one built from the painful lessons learned during 3 years of apparent defeat. The Zephyrians made one fatal mistake, he said finally. They think war is about having better weapons. But humans understand something they don't. War isn't about technology. It's about will. It's about who wants victory more. He turned to face the assembled officers and engineers. They wanted to teach us humility. Instead, they taught us anger. They wanted to break our spirit. Instead, they forged it into something harder than their best armor. They thought destroying our colonies would make us weak. Morrison's voice grew cold as space itself. Instead, they gave us nothing left to lose. The hidden fleet continued its secret preparations. In a few days, the Zephyrians would learn that humanity's greatest strength was not technology or weapons. It was the ability to turn suffering into wisdom, defeat into strategy, and loss into an unquenchable desire for justice. The teachers were about to become the students. High-Talon Vexcar stood in the command center of the Coalition flagship Skyripper, watching the celebration broadcast from across Zephyrian space. On every world, his people danced in the streets to honor their great victory over the humans. 3 years of perfect warfare had ended with the mammals finally begging for mercy. High-Talon, our scouts report no unusual activity in human space, announced Wing Commander Thelaris from the sensor station. The few remaining human ships are maintaining defensive positions around their core worlds. Vexcar preened his golden feathers with satisfaction. Excellent. The mammals have finally learned their place in the galaxy. Perhaps we can use them as laborers for our next expansion campaign. The celebration was interrupted by an urgent alarm. Red lights flashed throughout the command center as the ship's AI announced a priority alert. Multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace, the sensor operator called out. Range 15,000 kilometers and closing fast. Impossible, Vexcar snapped. Our long-range sensors show no approaching ships. Check your equipment. The main display screen flickered and showed the space around their position. At first it appeared empty. Then shadows began to move against the starfield. Ships materialized out of the darkness like ghosts becoming solid. By the winds, whispered Thelaris. Those vessels. They're almost invisible to our sensors. Vexcar stared in shock at the approaching human fleet. The ships were nothing like the crude vessels his forces had easily destroyed over the past 3 years. These were sleek predators built for war. Their hulls seemed to drink light, making them nearly impossible to detect until they were already in attack range. All ships, raise shields and prepare for combat, Vexcar ordered. But even as he spoke, he felt the first stirrings of doubt. How had the humans built such advanced vessels without his intelligence networks detecting them? The lead human ship broadcast a message that appeared on every screen in the Coalition fleet. A human female in a military uniform looked directly at the camera. This is Admiral Chen of the Terran Defense Force. You have 30 seconds to surrender unconditionally, or we will demonstrate what happens when you mistake human mercy for weakness. Vexcar's beak opened in disbelief. Are they insane? They're outnumbered 3-1. Open fire immediately. The Coalition ships launched their energy weapons in coordinated volleys. Brilliant beams of concentrated power lanced through space toward the human vessels. For a moment, Vexcar allowed himself to believe this would end like every previous battle. Then the impossible happened. The human ships' hulls began to glow as they absorbed the energy attacks. But instead of taking damage, the vessels seemed to drink the power and store it. When the barrage ended, the human ships were still intact and moving forward. High-Talon, our weapons had no effect, reported the tactical officer. Their armor is absorbing our energy output. That's impossible. No known material can. The human ships returned fire, but they didn't use projectile weapons or energy beams. Instead, they fired the stored energy from the Coalition's own attacks back at their sources. Zephyrian ships found themselves struck by their own weapons, amplified and redirected with devastating precision. The Coalition cruiser Windcutter exploded in a ball of superheated plasma. The destroyer Talon's Edge lost its shields and began venting atmosphere. 3 more vessels went dark as their power systems overloaded from their own reflected energy. This is impossible, Vexcar said again, but his voice had lost its confidence. How are they doing this? Wing Commander Thelaris was studying the sensor readings with growing alarm. High-Talon, I'm detecting massive jamming signals. Our communication networks are being systematically shut down. And, sir, she paused. These aren't just random attacks. The humans seem to know exactly where to hit us for maximum effect. Across the Zephyrian fleet, confusion spread as ship after ship found their systems failing in precise, calculated ways. The humans weren't just fighting. They were demonstrating superior knowledge of Coalition technology. How do they know our weak points? Demanded the tactical officer. The answer came in the form of a new transmission from the human fleet. This time it wasn't Admiral Chen speaking. It was a Zephyrian voice speaking perfect Coalition military language. High Command, this is Deep Wing Operative Clarthes, embedded within human intelligence networks for the past 18 months. The mammals have learned to replicate our technology and improve upon it. Recommend immediate withdrawal to defensive positions. Vexcar felt his blood turn cold. That's Agent Clarthes from our intelligence division. How are the humans broadcasting using his voice? The transmission continued. All coalition forces should be aware that human infiltration agents have been gathering intelligence on our military capabilities for over 2 years. Every tactical database, every shield frequency, every weapon signature has been studied and cataloged. Sir, that can't be real, Thelaris said desperately. Our security is perfect. No human could infiltrate our networks. But as she spoke, more transmissions flooded the coalition channels. Voices of Zephyrian officers, technicians, and intelligence agents, all supposedly reporting on human capabilities they had discovered. The voices were perfect. The military codes were correct. The information was devastatingly accurate. Vexkar realized with growing horror that either his entire intelligence network had been compromised, or the humans had somehow learned to perfectly mimic Zephyrian voices and codes. Either possibility was terrifying. "Hi, Talon, we're receiving surrender requests from our escort ships," reported the communications officer. "The humans are broadcasting detailed information about each vessel's crew, their families, and their home addresses. They know everything about us." The main display showed the battle continuing around them, but it wasn't really a battle. It was a demonstration. The human ships moved with perfect coordination, striking with surgical precision. They disabled weapons without destroying ships. They captured vessels without killing crews. They were showing mercy while proving their complete dominance. "This isn't possible," Vexkar whispered. 3 years ago, their ships were primitive. Their tactics were crude. How did they advance so quickly? A new voice answered him from the human fleet. It was Admiral Chen again, but this time she was speaking directly to his ship. "Hi, Talon Vexkar, you have been asking the wrong questions. You want to know how we built these ships so quickly. You want to know how we learned your secrets. You want to know how we became so powerful." The Admiral's image appeared on his personal screen, looking directly at him. "But the real question is this. What did you think we were doing for the past 3 years while you were celebrating your victories?" Vexkar felt understanding dawn like a cold wind. You were learning from us. Every ship you destroyed taught us about your weapons. Every colony you attacked showed us your tactics. Every victory you celebrated gave us more intelligence about your capabilities." Chen's expression was stone cold. "You thought you were teaching us humility. Instead, you were teaching us how to defeat you." Around them, the coalition fleet was falling apart, not from destruction, but from the psychological realization that everything they believed about human capabilities had been wrong. Their enemies weren't primitive mammals who got lucky. They were patient predators who had been studying them for years. "This is just the beginning," Admiral Chen continued. "You wanted to teach us lessons about power. Now we're going to teach the entire galaxy a lesson about what happens when you underestimate humanity." High Talon Vexkar looked around his command center at the faces of his crew. Fear had replaced confidence. Doubt had destroyed their certainty. The humans had won without even needing to destroy the coalition fleet. They had won by proving that Zephyrian superiority had been an illusion all along. And the lesson was just beginning. The Zephyrian homeworld of Ethros had not seen war for 500 years. Its crystal spires reached toward the sky in perfect harmony, and its citizens lived in peaceful confidence that their military would protect them from any threat. That confidence shattered when the human fleet arrived without warning. Governor Veltar stood on the balcony of the central spire, watching strange ships move across the morning sky. They were black as the void between stars, and they moved with a predator's grace. No alarms had sounded because the planetary defense grid couldn't detect them until they were already inside the atmosphere. "Governor, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet," announced his aide, a young Zephyrian named Crestin. Her feathers were pale with fear. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies simultaneously." The holographic displays throughout the city flickered and changed. Instead of the usual government broadcasts, every screen now showed the face of a human female in military uniform. Behind her, images of destroyed human colonies rotated slowly. "Citizens of Ethros, I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force," the human said in perfect Zephyrian language. 3 years ago, your military began what they called an educational campaign against humanity. Today, your education begins. Governor Veltar felt his talons scrape against the stone balcony. "How are they broadcasting on our secure networks? Our systems are supposed to be unhackable." The Admiral continued speaking. "Your leaders told you that humans were a primitive species that needed to be taught proper behavior. They showed you recordings of our ships being destroyed and our colonies burning. They told you it was necessary for galactic peace. The images on the screens changed. Now they showed detailed recordings of the Zephyrian attacks on human worlds. But these weren't the sanitized military reports that had been broadcast to the population. These were raw footage showing the reality of what had happened. Children running from energy weapons. Families torn apart by orbital bombardment. Entire cities vaporized while evacuation ships burned in the sky. What your leaders did not tell you, Admiral Chen said, is that every human world they destroyed was home to people just like yourselves. People with families, dreams, and children who trusted their governments to protect them. Throughout the city, Zephyrians stopped what they were doing to watch the broadcasts. Many had never seen the true footage of the human colonies being destroyed. The military had only shown them brief clips that made the attacks look clean and necessary. Governor Veltar activated his personal communicator. "Military command, why aren't our defense systems responding to this invasion?" The reply came back filled with static and panic. "Governor, our defense grid is completely compromised. The humans have taken control of every automated system. Our orbital platforms are powered down and our fighter squadrons can't launch because the hangar doors won't open. That's impossible. How could they infiltrate our entire defense network? Sir, we're finding evidence of intrusion programs that have been in our systems for over 18 months. The humans have been inside our network since before the war began." Veltar felt his world tilting. The humans had been preparing for this moment since before the first shots were fired. Every system, every network, every defense had been quietly compromised while the Zephyrian military celebrated their easy victories. On the screens throughout the city, Admiral Chen was still speaking. "We could have destroyed your world as you destroyed ours. We could have killed your children as you killed ours. We could have shown you the same mercy you showed to New Geneva and Kepler Prime." The images changed again. Now they showed the massive human fleet in orbit around Ethros. Hundreds of warships that could have reduced the planet to glass in minutes, but they hadn't fired a single shot. "Instead, we choose to teach you something your military never learned. The difference between justice and revenge. The difference between strength and cruelty. The difference between winning and simply destroying your enemies." Governor Veltar noticed that something was happening to the city around him. The crystal spires were changing. Somehow the humans had taken control of the very matter that made up the buildings. The towers were reshaping themselves, their surfaces now displaying names and faces. "These are the names of every human who died in your military's educational campaign," Admiral Chen explained. 400 million people who will never see another sunrise because your leaders decided they needed to learn humility." The governor looked closer at the names flowing across the crystal surfaces. Each one had a face, an age, a family. They weren't statistics or casualty numbers. They were individuals, and their stories were being written into the very foundation of Ethros. "How are they changing our architecture?" Krestin whispered in amazement and terror. The answer came from the broadcast. "Your scientists believed that crystal technology was beyond human understanding. You were wrong. We studied the wreckage of your ships. We learned from the debris of your weapons. And we discovered that your own buildings can be programmed like computer systems." Throughout the city, every structure was transforming. Government buildings became memorial walls displaying human faces. Military monuments became gardens dedicated to the children of destroyed colonies. The proud symbols of Zephyrian power were being rewritten to honor human sacrifice. "This is not destruction," Admiral Chen said. "This is education. Every building on this world will now carry the memory of what your military did. Every street will remind your people of the cost of underestimating other species. Every monument will teach your children that strength without wisdom leads only to tragedy." Governor Veltar realized that the humans weren't conquering Ethros. They were transforming it into a living reminder of their own losses. The planet would survive, its people would live, but nothing would ever be the same. Every surface would tell the story of human suffering caused by Zephyrian arrogance. "Governor, we're receiving reports from across the coalition," his aide announced. "The humans are doing the same thing to every Zephyrian world simultaneously. They've taken control of our infrastructure on 17 planets." The scope of the human operation became clear. This wasn't a military campaign. It was a galaxy-wide lesson being written in crystal and stone. Every Zephyrian world was being turned into a memorial for human losses. "Your leaders promised you that conquering humanity would be simple," Admiral Chen continued. "They told you that humans were weak, primitive, and easy to defeat. They were wrong about everything except one thing. The image on the screen zoomed in to show her face clearly. Her expression was calm, but her eyes burned with cold fire. Humans are easy to underestimate. We don't look threatening. Our technology seems simple. Our responses appear slow. But what your leaders failed to understand is that being underestimated is often humanity's greatest advantage. Around the city, the transformation continued. The beautiful spires of Ethros were becoming something new, not destroyed but fundamentally changed. The planet would be more beautiful than before, but it would never again be able to forget the price of assuming that any species was inferior. Governor Veltar looked up at the human ships hanging motionless in the sky. They had demonstrated power beyond anything the Coalition possessed. They had shown technological capabilities that made Zephyrian science look primitive, but most importantly, they had proven that humans understood something the Coalition had forgotten. True strength wasn't about having better weapons. It was about having the wisdom to know when to use them and when to choose a better path. The message was being written across the galaxy in letters of crystal and flame, and every Zephyrian alive would read it for the rest of their lives. 1 year later, the Galactic Council convened for the first time since the end of the Human-Zephyrian War. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the Great Hall on the neutral world of Concordia. But the most striking sight was not the diverse alien delegates. It was the Zephyrian representatives sitting in the back rows quietly taking notes. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the speaker's podium, looking out at the assembled delegates. Many species that had remained neutral during the conflict now watched her with a mixture of respect and wariness. They had all seen the footage of what happened to the Zephyrian Coalition. They knew that humanity was no longer the weak newcomer to galactic politics. "Honorable delegates," Chen began, "I stand before you today not as a conqueror, but as an educator. 1 year ago, the Zephyrian Coalition decided that humanity needed to learn its place in the galaxy. Today we gather to discuss what everyone learned from that experience." The Altarian ambassador, a crystalline being named Resonance of Truth, rose from her seat. "Admiral Chen, the Altarian Republic wishes to express our concern about the methods used in your campaign. While we understand your desire for justice, the complete transformation of 17 worlds seems excessive." Chen nodded calmly. "Ambassador, I appreciate your concern. However, I would ask you to consider the alternative. We could have followed the Zephyrian example and simply destroyed their worlds. Instead, we chose to create something that would ensure this kind of tragedy never happens again." She gestured to the main display, which showed images of the transformed Zephyrian worlds. The crystal spires of Ethros now served as a magnificent memorial garden, where beings from across the galaxy came to pay respects to the human dead. The former military fortresses had been converted into schools that taught the history of interspecies conflict and how to prevent future wars. "The Zephyrian worlds are more beautiful now than they ever were before," Chen continued. "Their people live in peace, but they live with constant reminders of the cost of aggressive warfare. Every child born on those worlds will grow up understanding that other species deserve respect." High Talon Vexkar, now serving as the Zephyrian representative to the council, stood slowly. His once proud feathers had lost their luster, and his voice carried the weight of hard-learned wisdom. "The human admiral speaks truth," he said quietly. "My people believed that superior technology meant superior wisdom. We thought that military strength gave us the right to judge other species. We were wrong about everything." He looked around the chamber at the other delegates. "The humans could have destroyed us completely. Instead, they chose to teach us. Every morning when I wake up on New Remembrance, I see the names of the humans who died because of my people's arrogance. It is a painful lesson, but a necessary one." The Centaurian delegate, a tall insectoid named Hive Mind Sigma, clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. "This council has observed the transformation with great interest. The former Zephyrian military worlds now produce more scientific research than they ever did weapons. Their agricultural worlds feed refugees from conflicts across the galaxy. How was this accomplished?" Chen smiled slightly. "Simple. We gave them better things to do. Turns out that when you remove the need to build weapons and conquer neighbors, a species has a lot of energy to put toward more productive activities." Dr. James Morrison, now serving as humanities science advisor to the council, stepped forward. "The key was understanding that the Zephyrian people were not our enemies. Their leadership had made terrible choices, but the average citizen was simply following what they believed to be legitimate authority. We separated the decision-makers from the people and gave everyone better options. The chamber fell silent as delegates processed this information. The human approach to warfare was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. They had won completely but had used their victory to build rather than destroy. Ambassador Resonance of Truth spoke again. What guarantees can you provide that humanity will not use these same capabilities against other species who might? Disagree with human policies? Chen's expression became serious. None whatsoever. The blunt answer sent ripples of concern through the chamber. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. However, Chen continued, I can tell you exactly what will happen if any species decides to attack human civilians or threaten our worlds. You've all seen the documentation of our capabilities. You've all observed what happens when humanity is forced to defend itself. The choice of whether we remain peaceful neighbors or become terrible enemies is entirely up to you. The draconian ambassador, a reptilian being named Scaleborn of Fire, leaned forward. Are you threatening the Council, Admiral? Not at all, Chen replied. I'm simply stating facts. Humanity wants peace, trade, and cooperation with all species. We're perfectly happy to remain a quiet member of the galactic community, sharing technology and resources for mutual benefit. She paused and looked around the chamber. But we will never again allow any species to attack our people while assuming we'll simply accept it. The age of considering humanity weak or primitive is over. Anyone who makes that mistake will receive the same education we provided to the Zephyrian Coalition. High Talon Vexcar stood again. Honorable delegates, I must speak plainly. The humans are offering you a simple choice. Treat them with the respect you would show any powerful neighbor, or learn the same lessons my people learned. I strongly recommend choosing respect. Delegate after delegate rose to acknowledge the new reality. The Rigelian Federation offered trade agreements. The Andromedan Collective proposed joint research projects. The Vegan Empire suggested cultural exchange programs. Within 2 hours, humanity had gone from being an ignored newcomer to being courted by every major power in the galaxy. As the formal session ended, Chen walked to the memorial section of the hall where a small garden had been planted. Each flower represented one of the destroyed human colonies. She knelt and placed her hand on the soil. Dr. Morrison joined her. Do you think it was worth it, Admiral? All the suffering, all the loss, just to teach the galaxy not to underestimate us? Chen looked at the names carved into the memorial stones. We didn't choose the lesson, James. The Zephyrians did. We simply chose how to teach it. She stood and looked out through the windows at the ships in orbit. Human vessels now flew alongside alien ones in peaceful formations. Trade routes that had been closed to humanity for decades were now open. Scientific data flowed freely between species. The galaxy learned that humanity can be a terrible enemy, she said quietly, but they also learned that we can be the best ally they'll ever have. It's their choice which one they get. In the distance, a Zephyrian transport ship was departing for the memorial worlds. It carried teachers, scientists, and artists who would spend their lives ensuring that the lessons of the war were never forgotten. The ship's hull bore a simple message in both human and Zephyrian languages. We remember so that others may learn. The age of underestimating humanity was over. The age of learning from humanity had begun. And the message written in flame had become a beacon of light for the entire galaxy. The teachers had become the guardians. And their lesson would never be forgotten.